What is happening today, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for tuning in. Today, I'm going to talk about one of the biggest fears everybody on the planet has. And, immediately you're thinking death. I know that's the first thing. And on a lot of lists, that is the thing. It is people's fear of death. But on every single list, in the top 5, the number one fear, in my opinion, I said number one in any list on the top 5. But I think really it should be number one on every list, and that's separation. That is separation. That's not a feeling or a sense of belonging. And that led me down a crazy rabbit hole. I have been studying a lot of different philosophies to prep for this video. And it took me down the rabbit hole of punk rock because I grew up punk rock. I was introduced to the Dead Kennedys, I think it was about 84, 85. Started skateboarding at 83 and punk rock came with it. So I went down that rabbit hole and I'm still going down that rabbit hole. We're almost 40 years later and I'm still down the punk rabbit hole. What drove it? I love the history of it. What drove it? And it was, in my opinion, a feeling of separation. A feeling of separation. And you wanted to be unique. You wanted to do your thing. You weren't into what was going on. If it was you were against capitalism or you were against the traditional family or you were pissed off because the big guys were making so much money and there was so much music about the working class. It goes a few different directions. But it really, no brainer, influential in my life, especially the DIY ethic. The DIY ethic, do it for yourself. If you can't find, I learned how to silk screen because I couldn't find shirts of the bands I liked. So I went to the library, photocopied a book on how to make silk screens, went to Dick Blick Art Supply in Dearborn because that was the only place you could get stuff to make silk screens, and I made my own t-shirts. To me, that's a big part of the punk rock thing. If it was the music, the zines that came with it, the shirts, all of that DIY, do it for yourself. Don't wait for somebody else. And where am I going with this? Because we started with your biggest fears. The fear of separation. I didn't feel like I belonged. And I was involved, I was playing ice hockey. I was a goalie, so I was already creating separation. I was on a team, but I was the guy in the corner who they thought was crazy because I like getting pucks shot at my head at 100 miles an hour. So I was fitting in everywhere, but I felt like I didn't fit in at all. And moving into high school, I found a handful of other people that were very similar. Heck, our class president was punk. That's pretty cool. And she was like, she might have been valedictorian. I don't know. Chorky, if you're watching this, comment below. Were you also the smartest person in our class? I think you were. But, I found this group and we had enough commonalities, but enough uniqueness. So there was a feeling of belonging there. And then moving on to college, I went to Wayne State University in Midtown, Detroit, and I found more people who were either skateboarders or punkers or doing their own art thing. College, I think college teaches people so much. Your sphere of influence broadens, and even more than the education. The education's important. I learned a ton, but the relationships you start to create, you start to see a wider scope. You're outside of your bubble, and maybe that's where you find your connection. Your that fear of separation maybe lessens a little bit, but also you're very malleable to new ideas, and so you're seeing a wider audience. But college taught me a lot, and then the skateboarding thing, becoming a professional skateboarder. Got to, broaden that scope even more. I got to travel and meet people, and it continued to open lines of communication. But I still had this feeling of I didn't quite fit in anywhere. So I was creating my own way. And to me, that was what punk rock meant to me. Create your own way. Do it for yourself. If you want to write a book, write a frickin' book. And technology today, in one level, helps to create more connection, but are they real connections? And ultimately, you have to have a real connection to feel like you really fit in. And I'm going to bring this around to addiction because that ultimately is the stoke of life, getting through that. And I believe one of the main causes of becoming an addict or an alcoholic or addicted to whatever, gambling or your phone or porn or whatever it is, you're looking for connection. And when you don't feel like you have connection, you go to extreme separation. And that's what uh, drinking did for me. It was extreme separation. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And even though if you ask people outside here, they'll be like, you fit in everywhere. In my head, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And that loss of connection led me to extreme isolation. I was the drunk who would frickin' lock my door, shut off my phone, and stack up 3/5 of vodka and just drink and hope I didn't wake up tomorrow. That is the extreme situation where you are separating yourself forever. And that's the path I was on. When I started drinking in my 20s, it was subconsciously for connection. I was one of the only friends I had who was straight edge. I didn't claim it, but I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I was an athlete. Um, and finally, around the age of 25, I started drinking, and I drank for a couple years. But my first birthday party after that, my friends were like happy. They were like, "Yeah, Garold's drinking. That's cool," And I had another line of connection with my friends, and it almost immediately, I mean, within a 2-year period, I got out of control. Out of control for me was drinking to not get out of bed, not get off the couch. And I was touring, I was doing my thing, but when I was home, I was a giant sack of shit. And it was very hard to keep doing what I was doing, um, faking everybody out publicly. But I would go home alone and just drink. And I quit after a couple years. Quit for about 11 years and started drinking again. And at that point, it was drinking to die. And I truly believe I truly believe this. I bet you I would have passed the polygraph. I believed I'd done everything I was going to do on this planet, and it would be better if I was dead. I truly believe that. And it all goes to connection. It all goes to connection. And then when we don't feel that connection, if we get into an addictive pattern, it creates more separation and more disconnection. And it just keeps fueling that fire. That's why AA works. And you could say what you want about it. The program helps a ton of alcoholics and addicts. AA works because it's one drunk helping another. There's a connection there. There's a feeling like you can talk to this person and they can understand. And a lot of us don't feel like we're connected. Yeah, social media gives you fake connections. But what about that person to person conversation across the table? That's important. Energy is important. A feeling of connection is important. Punk rock started because people were feeling disconnected. If you look at the philosophy of punk rock, it started, again, just my opinion in the studies I've done, but it started with this discontent, this feeling of disconnection, that the working class was disconnected from this upper echelon, and the music reflects that. Now what is punk rock? It's funny. It's a heated conversation. It's a heated conversation on social media with some of the biggest names in punk rock talking about it. You got the left, you got the right, you got the punkers who are doing this, doing that. Again, we have an extreme feeling of disconnection right now. And I think addiction is at an all-time high. It's not necessarily the people who are drinking 3/5 a day like maybe I was, but they're addicted to their phone. They're addicted to their social media feed, addicted to buying clothes, addicted to instant gratification. You get that Amazon package like that. And I'm guilty of it myself. I think it's incredible that I can order um, new heads for my drums. And instead of going to the local store, I can order it from my couch and it's going to show up on my porch tomorrow. That's crazy to me still. But there's this extreme disconnection because there are people who don't leave their house much because they can get it all delivered to them. And I think getting out in public, meeting people, having social interaction is so important, especially in sobriety. Because in addiction, we create this extreme disconnection. And bringing this all the way around, what did I start this video with? The biggest fears in the world, the biggest fears of humans, always in the top 5, is that feeling of belonging. That is important. We are a social species. That feeling of being part of something. And even the punks, you start wearing this big mohawk and making your own clothes, and you find out somebody else who is doing whatever they feel with their hair and making their own clothes. There's the connection. There's the connection. I think it went off the rails when Hot Tropics came in and you could go buy the uniform at the mall. But again, that's my opinion. That's my opinion. When you could go buy the uniform, where is the uniqueness of that? When you can buy a pair of pants that 20,000 other people bought. That's a little different. But hopefully it started you down a mindset of independence, of DIY, doing it for yourself. Don't wait for others to do it. And the biggest thing I want you to take out of this video is look at the decisions you've made in your life. And the ones that made you happy. Were those the ones you did for you and here? Or were those the decisions you made for connection? And where are you at in your sober journey? Comment below. Tell me about it. Because think about this thing. Think about this thing deeply. Where are you at in your sober journey? And did your addiction separate you from the things you love? Because it will. It will. If it didn't yet, it will. It will definitely take you away from the things you love. And in sobriety, there was a connection with self. I created a stronger connection with self. And in my studies leading up to this video, it's interesting because looking at a lot of people who have come up in the similar generation I did, they came up especially battling addiction. Very interesting, because addiction ended up separating them from all the things they loved. And in sobriety, this connection starts coming back, and a connection to something bigger than themselves. And it doesn't matter what you call it. You call it God, you call it Buddha, you call it Muhammad, you call it a higher consciousness, you call it infinite intelligence, whatever it is. You're looking for the biggest, most extreme connection with something bigger than you. Interesting. And a little deep, too. I hope you're thinking right now. Even write them down. Comment below. What are some decisions you made for connection? Just for connection. And they really weren't heartfelt. They really weren't who you are. But you're like, if I wear this outfit or I go to this place, they will like me. But what are you doing for you? You have to have an extreme connection to self, to you, to who you are, to the fibers that build who you are, however that got built to this point. And in sobriety, you really, it gets muddy and dirty and ugly. And in the end, it gets blissful because you get in the weeds and who you are and what are the things that make you happy. What gives you that gratitude in the morning to wake up? It's the most extreme connection you could ever experience. And then you start involving something bigger than yourself. And then it gets really deep. And now you start attracting like-minded individuals. There's that connection. In addiction, in sobriety, it's hilarious. I say it a lot. Like when you're sitting there talking with another person who has been on a similar journey as you, the jokes are pretty funny, but they wouldn't be funny to people who ain't been through it. But where did you make decisions in order to connect? And maybe it wasn't aligning with who you were, but subconsciously you wanted connection. And then extreme disconnection comes with addiction. And then extreme connection comes in sobriety. And I think that is a overlooked um, overlooked point when people discuss addiction and what drives you to addiction and also what drives you to sobriety. But I want to thank you all for being here today. We've just passed Thanksgiving Day, and that's a day of extreme gratitude from a lot of people. And it's almost like the C&E Christians. A lot of people don't express gratitude except on Thanksgiving. What are you thankful for? That should be every day. That should be when you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed at night. I ain't been feeling down in the dumps leading up to this video. And I'm like, go do the video, dude. It'll make you feel better. Talk about connection. Talk about it. And so I want to thank you all for being here. And the stoke really is real. We just got to sometimes fight through some things to get there. But thank you very much. Make sure to like, subscribe, share this video, and comment below what your thoughts are on disconnection, connection, your journey in sobriety, in life. And think about some of the decisions you made and why'd you make them. Because connection could be one of the main focuses of that decision-making paradigm that you have designed in your life. So thank you very much. Love you guys, and the stoke is real.
Come on!